In North America and Europe, the last Dreamcast games would be released in April and May of 2002 respectively. But legends live long, and the shooters the Dreamcast would eventually see would avenge their fallen platform. The legend of the Dreamcast doesn't end with its untimely death. Some of the very best shooting games of all time saw release months and even years after its discontinuation and subsequent clearance. This game is timeless. Derived from the Naomi arcade version and released to the Dreamcast on September 5th, 2002, Ikaruga would become a legend in its own right. New versions of the game are even seeing release on the newest consoles of today. The Dreamcast version, however, was only released in Japan. With Ikaruga, simplicity is the name of the game, so it's no surprise that a simple, straightforward design has been implemented in all of the game's packaging, starting with the manual. It features a striking painted image on the left, with the stark white-on-black kanji that comprises the title on the right. The back of the manual is simple matte black, with contact information for ESP and treasure. Ikaruga's simplicity is also shown in its obi, with bold black-on-white characters strategically placed to give it more presence. As always, the various supported features can be found on the rear panel of the obi. This game, of course, supports VGA. The disc here once again matches the simplicity of Ikaruga itself, a black disc with kanji seemingly painted or printed on, which we think is a neat stylistic choice. Meanwhile, the Dreamcast logo is stenciled over a bare silver portion of the disc. There is no internal art to Ikaruga, which is more or less the norm going forward from 2002, even with double-case games. But the back panel shows 7 images of Ikaruga's gameplay in both Yoko and Tate, with the same simple text as the obi and a few extra blurbs to flesh out what the game is all about at a glance. The rear panel of the obi is once again reproduced here as well, simple and effective. As far as manuals go, Ikaruga's could very well be unique. It uses matte paper stock rather than the thinner, glossy pages of the ones we've seen so far. This style was also employed with Radiant Silvergun as well. The manual features incredible art and design throughout its pages, making it one that players may find themselves leafing through without even really looking at the instructions. We'd expect nothing else from a game whose design is as thorough and deliberate as Ikaruga's. Our first encounter with Ikaruga was on the GameCube in 2003, and subsequent releases on Xbox 360, Steam, Switch, and PS4 have all tried and kind of succeeded to a point in upping the ante from there. But for our money, the Dreamcast version is where it's at. We've taken a look at Ikaruga twice on Bullet Heaven, first on Xbox 360 in episode 59, and then as an all-encompassing comparison from Dreamcast to Switch in episode 212. While the visuals are actually better than the GameCube's, and upscaled VGA in Tate mode rivals the new HD versions on Xbox, Steam, PS4, and Switch, the thing that really makes the Dreamcast version our preferred way to play is actually its sound. The Dreamcast version's music is much more rich, and the sound effects are much clearer than any other version of the game. The gameplay, of course, is as tight as it would ever be, with a simple yet deep mechanic that revolves around the black and white coloration of enemies and the player's craft. Players can switch between these colors at will, and in doing so, enemies of opposite color will be weak against the player's shots, and enemy shots of the same color will be absorbed into the player's craft to charge a high-powered homing attack. With only 5 stages, it may seem as if Ikaruga is short, but the time it will take to really figure out how to get through unharmed, while getting as high a chain as possible, is the game's greatest strength. Add to that multiple game modes, lengths, and difficulties, and Ikaruga is also pretty accommodating to players of varying skill. Less bullet hell and more of a puzzle game, it's hard, yes, but also fair. Fast forward just over a year, and G-Rev's Yoko STG Border Down would see release of the Dreamcast on September 25th, 2003. That it was only released in Japan and never ported to another system, unlike Ikaruga, it too stands today as a truly legendary title, perhaps even more so than Ikaruga itself. Unfortunately, it also commands some of the highest prices at auction for a Dreamcast game today. We'll be taking a look at the limited edition. Since the manual is also the standard edition cover, we can see here that it features a striking dynamic image featuring the player's ship and its pilot. Using both muted and bright colors, the image and title logos really pop. The limited edition cover features anime-style art of one of the characters, which isn't listed in the manual or anywhere in the game, really. We actually aren't especially fond of this character's design, though. In a lot of ways, the standard edition has a better cover. The back of the manual features an art piece with another two seemingly unnamed characters accompanying the girl on the front. We really wish these characters were better featured. Moving on to the Obi, the limited edition sports an extra wide spine card to cover its double case. The front has a colorful text and it lists all of the compatible accessories and features, including VGA of course, and even lists the music CD included with this set. The standard version is very similar but slimmer and with a lack of the music CD info. Speaking of which, the music CD included has a track listing right on its label. A small booklet of liner notes similar to the one found in the standalone release of the OST is also included. Meanwhile, the game disc itself is a fantastic shade of light blue, one of the best colors we've seen yet on a Dreamcast disc. Very nice. Sporting some English text this time, the rear panel has a slick layout that subtly refers to the border system in the game. There's not a lot of text here. It matches the OV for the most part, but it sure looks cool. Both versions of the game are very similar to each other, with the soundtrack CD info at the bottom of the image absent from the standard release. As is typically the case, a full-color manual makes for a well-presented means by which to explain the game's finer details, though the characters seen throughout the game, and the cover of the limited edition, are strangely absent. It was lucky that we obtained a copy of this game as complete as it is. If it had been missing the OB or even the CD liner, this series may not have even started. Border Down is definitely getting up there in cost, making it a title that perhaps only the most dedicated shooting fans might seek out. But it's also a pretty great game with some really interesting attributes. We took a look at Border Down in episode 122 of Bullet Heaven, and we were impressed with the game on the whole. This is a title that definitely takes a huge amount of time and skill investment to get the most out of, given its difficulty. At its core, Border Down is very much like Taito's Metal Black, which is fitting given that G-Rev is made up of a lot of ex-Taito staff. The player's main shots will power up over time through 5 levels, but can be more quickly leveled up with energy pickups. Using the powerful laser attack will deplete the gauge through each level as well, and the shot power will decrease in turn. This adds a strategic twist that definitely requires a good amount of attention to use as effectively as possible. What really sets Border Down apart is how each life is represented by a separate craft in a separate area of the stage. When the player loses a craft on the chosen border, it then goes to a harder one until all 3 are finally destroyed. Players can continue at the boss if this happens, but must restart the stage at a checkpoint otherwise. Easier borders can be regained through score extends. The penalty for death is high, but the rewards for playing on a higher border are also greater. It even features a full Dreamcast exclusive remix mode. Border Down definitely makes for a great desert island game. If you can believe it, it wouldn't be until the next year again before another shooter would see release of the Dreamcast. This time it's Siberia R2, The Will to Fabricate by Success. It was released only in Japan on February 26, 2004. With one of the cooler covers on the Dreamcast, Siberia R2's manual features pilot Yuhei's 5 aesthetics mecha against a sweet planetary background. The Though it has a fairly sterile look, it works for the kind of gameplay and presentation the game exhibits, which of course we'll take a look at soon. The rear of the manual features the red enemy mecha first encountered in Stage 1, along with various contact methods for success. Siberia R2's Obi features pastel-colored text which actually kind of has a soothing shade to them. Pleasant. A small box at the bottom reads Shooting. As always, the back panel displays compatible accessories and features including VGA support. Like Zero Gunner 2, Siberia R2 has a rich, deep blue disc, with Pilot K's Maitreya mecha stenciled in black. The Siberia R2 and Success logos are highlighted in silver. It's simple, and we dig it. The rear panel is packed with a ton of game information alongside 4 screenshots in Tate orientation. The information and features are laid out in a straightforward manner, and while it's pretty wordy, it's not too bad, if a bit on the plain side. The manual is, of course, full color, with all of the character, story, and gameplay information that players should, by now, expect from a Japanese Dreamcast release. While it is a bit on the plain side, it still, once again, works alongside the presentation within the game as well. Siberia R2 is admittedly a game we didn't get at first. We pored over the manual and nothing was especially clear. It wouldn't be until we played Siberia R Delta that the mechanics of the game clicked. As such, we can say now with certainty that Siberia R2 is a great part of the series that's definitely worth playing. We took a look at Siberia R Delta in episode 244 of Bullet Heaven, and we discovered some crucial intricacies that translate to Siberia R2 as well. Siberia R as a series is based entirely on patience. Shooting everything on screen won't get the player far, but waiting for enemies to crowd in and fire their bullets before going in for the graze and/or the kill is the best way to go. By wiggling the player's ship, Siberia R Medium Unit and Revision had a pure emphasis on grazing as many bullets as possible to not only inflate their level and power, but also make it to harder stages and bosses. Siberia R2 is similar, but not completely. This time around, experience will boost the player's level and power, but the stages are not selectable. Instead, players will simply go to harder phases of the same stage. It's more streamlined as a result, and also offers slightly less choice. There are different approaches to gaining experience as well. Using K will put an emphasis on shooting, which will spike experience based on bullet collision and grazing while invincible. Yuhei's Buzz type is more of a return to form, but more difficult due to the invincibility being much more brief this time around in general. The true last boss requirements are difficult, and the gameplay is, in a lot of ways, more intense, but Siberia R2 is a game we're totally on board with now, especially with its spectacular visuals and incredible soundtrack. Look forward to a full review on Bullet Heaven in the future. Three more for the Japan Matrix, and it looks like we're approaching the end pretty quickly. Lots more to see though, as you can tell from the gaps here. There are no new entries for the North American Matrix. The homebrew Matrix is also unchanged. There's still potential for more though, so we'll keep a sharp lookout. Our next episode is sure to be a great one that could end up upsetting the kind of viewers that can't bear to see a sealed game getting torn into, cause we're cracking the seal on 2, including a limited edition. See you all in the next episode.